What's up guys, welcome to episode 16 for the Barra T4580 build. In this episode we get back to the fuel system where we're going to be finishing off and pressure testing the tanks. Then we're going to mount them to the car and we're also going to disassemble the cab and send it off for Sodablasting. Let's get into the build log now. First up I'm going to be welding in my 1/2 inch MPT bungs and then fitting my senders to the tanks. All these welding fittings and bungs are from barratheworld.com, so thanks heaps guys for your continued support. Pressure testing the tanks, so I've got these 1/2 inch MPT bungs, which I've got in all the ports that I've welded on. I got this in the mail. It's a Schrader valve to 1/4 inch MPT, and then I've got a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch adapter. So I'll be able to pump it up with a bike pump and go up reasonably slowly, maybe a compressor, but I really don't think that they need to be pressure tested to a high PSI. I'm thinking sort of less than 5. I don't want to balloon out the tanks. I'm pretty sure that these things are going to leak, so it's just a matter of how much and where, and I'll just be able to fix it with the welder. So I've got some soapy water in here, just with some dishwashing liquid, and we're just going to spray that on the weld. It's a bloody miracle so far. This is the first pinhole, hopefully not the first of many. But you can see it just bubbling away through there, so I'm gonna have to fix that up with the welder. It's not a big deal. I'm just gonna continue pressure testing these, and I'm gonna mark them with an arrow and then weld them later. It is possible that, you know, there actually aren't that many leaks, which is surprising to me. And I'm testing it with a sender in as well. I'm doing this because, I mean, it's got to hold pressure ultimately, but it looks all good. Just finished up pressure testing this tank, so we have 2 leaks, which honestly I thought there'd be way more than that, so I'll go ahead and weld them up and pressure test it again. We'll just go do the main tank now before we do that and do all the welding at once. So the final result for the pressure test was that there were 2 pinholes in the auxiliary tank, none in the main tank and none in the surge tank. So fair to say that I'm pleasantly surprised and pretty stoked given it was my first time welding fuel tanks. We're making a cradle for the fuel tank to sit up in. So I'm just making these out of some 3mm steel, and I'm gonna put a bar across here, and then we'll be able to put the fuel tank in from underneath and then clamp it up. So I'm just getting them in the right position now, and it's all in my head, and it's gonna come out all good, I hope. Yep, the welder has to be on. Oh, yeah. So I've got my fuel tank in position. I've got my tank straps done, my top straps at least, and now I've got to make the bottom ones. So I'm super happy with the position though. There's probably like, I don't know, 60mm between the tank and the exhaust. I could probably move it over a little bit. I just got to do the plumbing first. I mean, it's not finalized, and I can obviously move the tank quite easily at the moment. So now the front tank's mounted, I'm going to rinse and repeat with the rear tank. So the rear tank doesn't actually need a cradle like the front tank, as it sits much closer to the chassis rails. So I'm just going to make some brackets that come off the chassis rails. Okay, so we're going to strip down the cab today, and it is going to go off and get soda blasted and etch primed. So it'll make it way easier to work on stuff like the fuel system while it's going to do that, and I need to do it anyway. I'm not a patina guy. Sorry to all the patina lovers out there, but yeah, I want a, you know, not a super nice paint job, but a relatively nice paint job. Obviously, it's going to get scratched up in the bush. super fortunate. I have an awesome neighbour with a Unimog. Go give him a follow. His two-door Merc, so his Unimog is able to fit my full FJ cab in. So I've got my bonnet, my roof, FJ cab, and we're sending it off to Sodablasting like this, fully disassembled. So yeah, I am absolutely stoked on that. How cool are Unimogs? He also has a 700 rear wheel horsepower Barra Swap Patrol. Go give that a follow as well. Barra GU on Instagram. So the cab is off. I had a huge chop out from a few people. Couldn't have done it alone. Couldn't have gotten it off alone. It was actually really hard to get over the trans. So now the cab's off, I've got a really good opportunity to work on my fuel system and fuel tanks and maybe even some brake lines, all the stuff that's chassis mounted. I can also do some other welding, like welding these plates. So I've been waiting to do some of these jobs, and I knew that the cab had to come off at some point. So I've sort of stacked them up and we'll try and do them over the next few weeks. This is a bit of a setback, not a major one really, but I guess the drive shaft is too close to the fuel tank. I didn't model the drive shafts in CAD, so I didn't know. The plan is to remove the drive shaft. I'll take the tank out and I'll move the whole thing backwards and up a little bit, and I'll see where that gets me. But then I think ultimately I'm going to have to cut out a little bit of a U just so I get ample clearance. A U and sort of on an angle like that. Alright, so I definitely would have rather have folded this around these corners here, and that would have given me a really nice radius which the rubber would have taken to. So unfortunately I don't have enough material to start again, and I went with this method at the start just because I wasn't quite sure on the exact dimensions, but in hindsight it would have been really easy to fold it. So I think the weld's going to be definitely strong enough. I'll get inside and outside, that's not a problem, but it's just it would have been nicer to go the other way. So I guess this is my weld table. You may remember it from a few months ago. There's an episode on it on my channel. So I made this, I designed it, and it's really coming into its own now. Just for laying out stuff like this, I'm able to put these bolt through clamps in and then magnet just to get my straight lines, which is really cool. So really glad I have my weld table at the moment. It really makes my life a lot easier. Finished up fusion welding my straps, so time to put them back on the car. Not sure where I'd be without these window packers and ratchet straps. That's currently what's holding the tank up. So I've sort of gone for V2. I'm really happy with the position now. And yeah, I ran some string line, and it does look like we're going to have to cut and shut some of that out. So I'll just tack on all of these. I decided I didn't like the bar position, so I've got a new bar in 32 NB, which is a bit thicker, a bit beefier. So we're going to run that one as well. And then we're going to, cut and shut the tank. So just a little U out of there. Nothing too serious, but kind of serious. Put this bar in, I've capped the ends off so we don't get any water and rust in there. Bit surprised, I put the drive shaft in just to check, and I was able to drop it all the way down on my 50mm packers, so there's about 5mm in there. I mean, in theory, I don't think it could go below that, but just for a peace of mind, what I'm going to do is notch it out. I'm going to make the notch nice and wide, so then in articulation we won't have any problems either. I'm really happy with that clearance. So I think that's almost 50 mil at full bump. So we're good, and we should be good through articulation as well. Just thought I'd show you my cradle with the fuel tank out of the car, just so it's easier to understand. So it's not quite hitting the top of the tray. I mean, yeah, sure, you could have clamped it up against the tray, but I don't think that's the greatest idea because the tray sort of flexes around a little bit. It'd get annoying for assembly and disassembly as well. So that's sort of why I've gone this cradle design. The fuel tank will clamp up against the top of there. I'm happy with the cradle. I'm happy with the fuel tank and the little notch out of it. I'll put some ratchet straps on it now, and then I'll be able to make the stainless steel fuel tank straps. So I've made these T-pieces up from some bolts and tigged them together. You can see the T-piece of the T-piece is actually just the bolt shank. Just use some ram board to make a template. I've only got one go at these straps. Cardboard to reality. So I've got my stainless steel straps here. You can see my custom T-piece can pivot a little bit, which is ideal for tension. And then this one goes into the reciprocating bolt at the back of the bracket. I've got these rubber straps. I think they're actually closer to 2 mil thick. And obviously that covers the strap, so I've just got this one so I can peel it off and show you. 1.6 mil thick stainless. Now I ran the numbers on that and they're okay. This stuff you can't buy from the shop, so this is a guillotine sheet. And the reason I've done that is so it's malleable and will actually take up as you do up these bolts. Could use some 3 mil or something like that, but I don't think it'd bend as easily, and you want to keep the tank under tension and keep it holding up. So I can go and install them now. Alrighty, so I've got my fuel tank straps on. Here they are from underneath. I've got the bolt and the T-bolt into a 5 mil plate. But there's a bolt that goes through on the backside. And yeah, so I can pull this in and out freely. It's not welded in or anything. And then this T section is welded in. There you have it, the tank supported by the straps. Oh, solid as. How good. Man in shed bodges together some fuel tank straps. Bloody wrapped on that. You may be wondering why I went with fuel tank straps as a mounting system. It seems quite finicky. Now, Ali doesn't have great fatigue properties, and if you to weld brackets or something on the side and mount off the brackets, then they're really not going to last that long due to fatigue and also concentrating the load on, on a particular point. So I think the strap is really good because I've got two of them and it distributes the load over quite a wide area of the tank. So yeah, I think straps, I mean, even if you check under most OEMs, they've all got fuel tank straps. Now that the front tank's finished, I'm redoing the rear one as well. I wasn't happy with the position or the brackets, and I didn't really have a good reference when I did it. And in hindsight, I really should have waited until the tray was finished before I tackled the fuel tank mounting, as it gives me a supreme reference in comparison to thin air. Hindsight, eh? Wooden jig. Pretty much building houses now, so I'm going to use some window packers to pack it out. Got this clamped to the top here. Then I've got my desired height and I'll be able to fit my drawer in, which will be perfect. Just finished up getting all my tabs in the right spot. I had to make this up. It's quite a complex little bit. I really should have got it lasered. It took me ages to make. But basically the T-bolt is going to stick up through there. So I'm really happy with the height, really happy with the position. I can take off my wooden jig and yeah, then we're good to go. So then I'll be able to get some welds in from the bottom and then make the straps for it. Here we have the rear fuel tank straps off the car. So same principle again, these are a bit more shaped and profiled around the tank just because of the nature of the mounting. Really fiddly bits to get right. It took way longer than it probably should have, and I pretty much had to do everything twice when I was mounting these tanks just because it was a bit of a learning, well, it was a big learning experience for me actually. So let's go bolt them on the car now, and then yeah, let's have a look at the tanks. So there you have it, the fuel tank is all mounted up. It feels pretty good because I've been ratchet strapped there for months. Pretty happy with how the mounting came up overall. A mistake that I made was I put my sender here, and I really shouldn't have. I really should have put it in the middle of the tank. I should have given it more thought before I did it. The problem was I got it laser cut really early on in the piece, and I didn't fully understand where my mounts were going. I knew how I was going to do it, but I didn't understand where. So that isn't a mistake that I made. But I've overcome that by putting a bracket there, and the strap takes off from there to this mounting point here. I'll give you a look from the top. Maybe you can tell already, but this just fits the rear of the car pretty perfectly. So there's a gap on all the sides. I'm really happy with the overall shape of this because it's a really efficient use of space. So as far as departure angle goes, you know, I really don't think that I'm going to have any dramas. I was trying to get a look from back there, so it sits really high up, so I don't think I'm going to have any dramas at all. I still should be able to get a drawer in between the tank and the top of the tray, which you'll see in the next episode. So we've finished off the fuel tanks and the cab is back from Sodablasting. So they did it in an epoxy primer. They ran out of etch, so they just gave me epoxy anyway. I don't think it'll be a problem. So I'm going to try and tackle the majority of the rust repair, and then I'm thinking about sending it off to someone to do a paint job, just because I have no experience with rust repair or painting. So I'm thinking that's the way I'm going to go, but I'm not quite sure. I'll try and paint the rest of the car, but the cab, I feel like, you know, to get a half decent finish, it'd be wise to send it off to someone. So let's just quickly inspect the damage to see what we're dealing with. So as you'd remember from the first episode, if you've been following along, I always knew that I'd have to replace pretty much this whole rear sill, and it's not in great shape, but that's all good. So we'll have to make a replacement panel for that one. Under the floor, we've got a couple of holes there. I'd probably cut that out anyway, that's not a big issue. So the actual lower half of the cab is in pretty good condition. I won't actually have to do too much work, just some of the floors there and then on the other side as well. I think it's pretty hard to get metal FJ roofs, and a lot of people replace them with fiberglass. So I'm pretty stoked with the roof overall. Now there's just this little corner of rust here, so I'll be able to cut that out. And then the rest of the panels, I mean, look, at a quick glance, without going into too much detail, they look all right. I'm sure there's going to be little things that I have to fix up on all of them. But yeah, I mean, pretty good overall. Sodablasting is not something that I really wanted to do in the garage just because I don't have a good compressor and it's a really messy process. So I think paying the money and getting it outsourced, you know, they turned it around in less than 24 hours. So I was pretty happy to send it out and get it blasted and primed for me. So the cab is now going to be off the chassis until I finish the rust repair. I might put it back on to mock up some sliders, but there's no real reason for it to be on, and it gives me way better access on all the chassis stuff, so it's not going to be back on the car and fully repaired for quite a while now. So that's it for this episode. The fuel system is to be continued. Obviously, it still needs to be plumbed, and the car needs to run from the fuel tanks. I'm still working out how to plumb it, and I'm waiting on a few bits, so we'll jump back into that in a future episode. Next episode, we're going to be focusing on my under tray drawer, and I'll flash up the cat again, which I showed at the end of last episode. As well as the drawer, we're also going to do the rear end of the tray setup. I can't wait to finish off the tray for good. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit like and subscribe down there and tune in to the next episode for this build. Cheers.